So, Diablo 4's Season 10 is finally upon us, and it's all about chaos powers and new chaos unique items. I've spent the past week basically heads down on various classes and builds, and can confidently say I'm actually not really a big fan of what's going down this season. First and foremost, I find the concept of chaos uniques to be an interesting one, but albeit one that was absolutely mishandled on Blizzard's part. Rather than fix some fundamentally flawed issues with both the game's overall balance in gear and itemization, Chaos Uniques end up being a thinly veiled attempt at avoiding those larger issues in favor of the new and shiny appeal of, say, slapping a Fist of Fate onto your pants or a Wushu Napak on your helmet. True, it's weird and wacky, but it also turns the task of putting like a true endgame build together both extremely frustrating and inordinately time-consuming. With so many variations of what a unique can drop as for a Chaos Unique, the chances of finding the specific one that actually fits your build is extremely, extremely low. And that translates directly to more time played and more time wasted. With some builds requiring 4 to 6 specific Chaos Uniques, players are in for some really unenjoyable farming. Myself, for one of my builds, I filled 3 stash tabs full of Chaos Uniques, and actually only one ended up being useful for my build, and that took a ton of farming. Chaos powers are, as usual, both a hit and a miss. While they're very useful for most builds, the large majority of them, again, end up being completely ignored over the use of a few favored. The idea of chaos powers having both a benefit and a disadvantage is a cool idea, but it largely feels like stolen content from how Path of Exile deals with unique items, which follows that same format. It may give you a great boost in one area, but then conversely, it'll give you like a big buff, debuff, or a nerf in some other area. Chaos Rifts are also an interesting concept, but also one that I feel could have been handled in a way more streamlined way. Running around Helltides, competing for rare and legendary rifts with sweaty tryhards is not fun. Getting to a rift late or missing one because, say, of lag or one of those stupid hellworms pops out of the ground and knocks you off your mount, that gets really annoying really quickly. I'd love to see a more insular approach to these kinds of season mechanics. Thankfully, I find doing Chaos Rifts inside Nightmare Dungeons to be way more user-friendly, namely because you don't have to compete with those aforementioned other players, and so far I've had really good luck getting good, rare, and legendary rifts, including those that drop Chaos Armor. Perhaps the most disappointing part of the new season is the season quest line, and I use that term very loosely because there's basically little actual quest line content. Every single season, the quest line is basically non-existent, and this season is no exception. Despite the fact that Bartok is apparently this horrifically dangerous demon that threatens the very existence of Sanctuary, you can't seem to get a questline that actually does this danger justice. You run through a handful of meaningless dialogues, and you kill Bartok, and that's it. The NPC who starts you on the quest can't even really muster up much enthusiasm, and basically just tells you, okay, great, once you've taken care of Bartok. The same Bartok that was, moments ago, this hugely monumental threat to everything. It makes little sense to me why Blizzard can't find more interesting and interactive ways to tie the season quest line together with the actual season gimmicks and powers. So, we're basically stuck with interesting, yet disparate ideas and concepts that look cool on paper, but never really seem to synergize with each other. That's disappointing, especially after so many seasons of the same rote underachievement. Now, let's talk about Horde, which also got a big rework for Season 10. I've always been a bit mixed on Horde. Previous to Season 10, it was a good method for farming stuff like Obducite, albeit slower than doing so, like, say, via Nightmare Dungeons. Well, Blizzard has now nerfed the Obducite you get from Nightmare Dungeons and their associated strong rooms, which feels pretty lame to me and feels like a really bad way to force you into Horde. Horde itself remains largely unchanged with the exception of 2 things. There's now more varied boons and banes, the things you pick between rounds that either help you or hinder you, and the addition of Chaos Rift rounds that have the potential to give you a ton more ether. The newly revised banes and boons are a nice change for Horde, but ultimately it doesn't feel like they really change all that much in the grand scheme of things. You'll get some more ether from things like Hellborns having a chance to spawn during ether events, but the net gain for you as a player really isn't that impactful. It really seems like a lot of smoke and mirrors. The real draw, obviously, is the Chaos Rift rounds, especially the Goblin one that can net you thousands of ether from a single round. But for every goblin round, there's a worthless one that will just net you about the same amount of ether as a normal horde round. So, obviously, RNG ends up playing a big role in whether you're going to be able to end horde with 3,000 to 5,000 ether, or maybe just like 1,000 to 1,500. Having Bartok as a special boss at the end of horde when you're above Torment 1 or higher, and for the cost of 666 ether to fight him, it ends up actually being a pretty good farming method for Chaos Uniques, since he's usually going to drop at least one per run. But on the other hand, I also feel like I could either farm a single piece in another way or get the repeatable cache from the season rep mechanic in the same amount of time that it would take me to run through a 10-round horde. The best thing about those repeatable caches is that every single cache you do get is guaranteed to drop at least one Chaos Unique, so it can end up being a really good farming method if you can farm the rep fast enough. Overall, Season 10 feels like more of the same, which is pretty sucky. Interesting ideas that are weakened by the fact that there's actual little synergy between anything that's going on. Chaos Uniques are interesting, but they feel like a superficial way to make builds more quote-unquote interesting, rather than fix actual problems with skills and itemization. The fact that Horde will more than likely go back to normal in Season 11 basically means the mode will go back to being boring again, which has actually largely happened to Nightmare Dungeons this season because they lost a lot of the appeal that made them fun to play in Season 9. Lots of folks are saying this season and last season are just filler as Blizzard works on a larger revamp for Season 11 and the next expansion, whenever that may be. And you know what? That may all be true, and that actually sounds pretty realistic. But overall, it's still disappointing to have to play through the same old stuff, where it's obvious the effort behind it was very, very low. Thanks again for taking the time to listen to my thoughts about Season 10. Like I said before, it's not perfect. These seasons rarely are. Blizzard rarely seems to put a lot of effort into them. But you know what? I still play it, and it's still fun. I have a number of single-skill challenge run builds that I'll be posting throughout the Season 2, so be sure to come back and check those out. Thanks a lot.